He was secretly paying for his ex-wife's medical treatment using the money we saved for IVF. When I saw the bank statements, it became clear he had chosen her, not me. Hi. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 and less than a month ago I was certain I had everything. A loving husband, a cozy suburban home, and nearly $40,000 in our joint savings account, set aside specifically to finally start a family. We had been trying to conceive for 2 years. After all the tests and tears, the doctors told us IVF was the only way. So we started saving. This wasn't just money, it was our every hope. Every evening we spent dreaming of a small crib in our bedroom. We called the account The Future of Jordan and Sarah. My husband, Jordan, who is 35, had always been my anchor. Calm, rational, sometimes overly so. He had a past. A marriage to a woman named Megan that ended 6 years ago, before we met. Their relationship, he said, was friendly but minimal. They parted ways amicably with no children. I had never worried about it. I trusted him implicitly. Trust, it turns out, is a very fragile thing. Like thin ice you walk on, unaware of the abyss underneath. It started with something small. I couldn't find an old insurance policy in the document drawer. Jordan usually kept all the important papers there, and he was away on a business trip for 3 days. I was searching, moving things around, and I stumbled upon a thick folder marked in his careless handwriting. Personal. Do not touch. This was odd for Jordan. He wasn't a person of secrets or folders screaming not to be opened. I could have ignored it, but something in my stomach tightened into a cold, hard knot. That knot is never wrong. I opened it, and it wasn't a stack of old tax returns or letters from a previous job. It was a series of bank statements from our joint account, the very Future of Jordan and Sarah account. But these weren't the statements that came to us in the mail every month. These were detailed, printed from the bank receipts for transfers that I had never seen. They started at the beginning of this month, right after we had finally deposited the last large sum for the IVF. I saw a transaction. Funds transfer. Recipient: Megan R. Amount: $2,500. A single transaction, and at first I thought maybe it was a loan, although that would be strange. But then I flipped through. The next week: funds transfer. Recipient: Maple Street Clinic. Amount: $4,800. And 2 days later: funds transfer. Recipient: Megan R. Amount: $1,200. In total, over the last 3 weeks, more than $15,000 had vanished from our account. $15,000. Nearly half the amount we had saved for the dream of our lifetime. For my future motherhood. Along with the receipts were medical bills. They were addressed to Megan. They were bills for some specialized, extremely expensive therapy. It looked like oncology, although there was no direct diagnosis, just codes and procedure names that Google quickly identified as chemotherapy and consultations. I didn't need to be a doctor to understand. Megan was seriously ill. And Jordan was paying for it with our money. With my money. With the money for our future child. In that moment, my world didn't just collapse. It evaporated, leaving me alone on a cold, bare surface. I didn't feel anger right away. There was only this deafening emptiness, as if the voice had been pulled out of my mouth. I sat on the floor, clutching those papers, and the only thought pulsing in my head was, he was secretly paying for his ex-wife's medical treatment using the money we saved for IVF. When I saw the bank statements, it became clear he had chosen her, not me. This wasn't about the money. This was about priorities. This was about a lie so profound that it pierced through our entire joint existence. He didn't just take the money. He took our hope and gave it to someone else. And I had to keep quiet about it until he returned from his trip, and pretend that the world was still whole. I had to pretend everything was fine. For 3 days I rehearsed the conversation in my head, but I knew the truth was a bomb that would destroy our home the second I dropped it. The silence in the house after I found the folder was worse than any screaming match. It was a suffocating, heavy silence that smelled like betrayal. Jordan was gone for 3 more days, and I existed in a kind of suspended animation. I went to work. I'm a graphic designer working mostly from home, but my fingers hovered uselessly over the keyboard. I made dinner but couldn't taste it. I even watered the plants, thinking, how ridiculous tending to a dying ficus when your entire life is about to rot. I didn't call him. I couldn't. I needed to see his eyes when I asked. I needed to witness the physical moment the lie crumbled off him. If I called, he would have time to formulate a story, to minimize, to use his calm, rational voice to talk me out of my feelings. This wasn't a misunderstanding. $15,000 doesn't just accidentally wander off to pay for a former spouse's chemo. This was a deliberate, massive deception, and I was going to face it in person. I spent those 72 hours not processing the betrayal, but Megan's illness. I had never met her, only seen a few blurry wedding photos Jordan had packed away. She was a ghost in my life, a footnote. Now she was a financial black hole draining my future. Was she dying? Was it terminal? My anger kept bumping into a wall of grim empathy. It was a horrible situation. Nobody deserves to go through cancer. But why did my husband put her life ahead of our child? Why didn't he tell me? We had other savings, smaller ones, maybe his personal emergency fund, but he chose the one account that represented the most sacred, vulnerable part of our relationship. I put the folder back exactly as I found it. I wiped my fingerprints. I didn't want him to know I knew, not yet. I wanted him to walk in the door, kiss me, and think he still had his perfect lie intact. I needed that moment of total control, the knowledge that I held the detonator. When he finally walked in late Wednesday night, he was exhausted. "Hey babe," he murmured, dropping his suitcase by the door. He smelled like airport coffee and dry cleaning. He tried to kiss me, but I instinctively turned my cheek. I wasn't cold, not really, I was rigid. If he touched me, I felt I would shatter into a million pieces of screaming rage. "Rough trip?" I asked, my voice coming out unnervingly even. "A performance worthy of an Oscar." "The worst. That striker deal is a nightmare," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just need a shower and to crash." He didn't notice the strange stiffness in my shoulders. He didn't notice I hadn't asked a single question about his meeting. He was so focused on being tired and on his business troubles that he didn't see the volcano simmering under my skin. This was another layer of the betrayal. His oblivious entitlement, his assumption that my world revolved around his stress, while he was secretly handling a life-or-death crisis with his ex-wife. The next morning I poured him coffee. We sat at the kitchen island just like a normal Friday. I kept the conversation light, the weather, a neighbor's ridiculous dog. I watched him, really watched him, looking for any flicker of guilt, any hesitation in his eyes. Nothing. He looked like the same decent, responsible man I married. That made it 10 times worse. He was a professional liar. So, about the IVF appointment, I started casual but firm, setting the bait. "I want to call Dr. Evans on Monday. We should probably transfer the funds soon. Maybe just wire the whole $40,000 to the clinic's account? Get it done." I watched him take a sip of his coffee. His hand didn't shake. "Oh, Sarah," he said, and I finally saw a hesitation, a tiny shift in his gaze that darted away from mine. "About that. I got a heads up from the bank. There might be a slight delay with some of those transferred funds. Just a clerical error, something about an old investment maturing late. I already called them. Let's wait until next Friday to transfer the funds. Just to be safe. We don't want any snags right before the procedure." A clerical error. An old investment maturing late. He was making up an elaborate, calm lie right to my face, to buy himself more time. He was trying to protect the secret, not me. He wasn't even sweating. He had planned this, he had calculated the lie, and he delivered it with the smooth confidence of a man who believed he was doing the right thing, or at least that he would never get caught. I didn't argue. I just smiled, a thin, chilling smile that felt like glass shards on my lips. "Okay, Jordan. Next Friday it is." I stood up, walked to the utility closet, and pulled out a small steel lockbox. "What's that?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, this?" I lifted the folder marked personal. "Do not touch," from the counter. "It's just the folder with the old insurance policy. I found it. Thought I'd keep it somewhere more secure, like in this box. Safety first, right?" I gave him a look that should have incinerated him. I put the folder and the key into the lockbox and walked away. He stared at the box. He didn't say another word. The hook was set. Now we wait for the line to snap. I cornered him the day before the transfer. I didn't yell. I just showed him the bills and asked if he thought his dying ex-wife was more important than the child he promised me. The silence was the most aggressive thing I've ever heard. That weekend was torture. We moved around each other like strangers in a poorly lit museum. I went through the motions of a normal wife. I did laundry, suggested we watch a movie, even brought him a beer while he was scrolling through his phone. Every interaction was a meticulously crafted lie on my part, a silent test of his guilt. He, in turn, was tense but trying to appear normal, which made him seem perpetually distracted and oddly affectionate, the kind of forced tenderness a person uses to cover a deep anxiety. I kept the lockbox in the open on my nightstand. It was a tangible presence, a small metal coffin holding our ruined future. He glanced at it constantly. He didn't ask about it. He didn't ask for the key. He just let the silence and the impending deadline of next Friday, the day I said we'd wire the full $40,000, compress the air in the house. He was trapped and I was holding the cage. The tension finally snapped on Thursday evening. We were eating takeout on the sofa. I noticed he wasn't eating much. He picked at his chicken and rice, his jaw tight. "Jordan, are you okay?" I asked, putting down my fork. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I told you, Sarah. The striker deal is killing me. I've got to call David later tonight about the projections. Just stress." Stress. That word tasted like ash. I looked at his kind, familiar face, the face I loved, and realized that his stress was a choice. He chose to carry this burden of lies alone, instead of trusting me with the awful truth. I stood up slowly. I walked to the nightstand, picked up the lockbox, and set it down hard on the coffee table between us. The clatter made him jump. "No, Jordan," I said, my voice low and level, a dangerous monotone. I was not going to yell. Yelling gave him the out of an argument. I wanted a confession. "The striker deal isn't killing you. The lie is." He stared at the lockbox. The blood drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out. For the first time the mask slipped. I saw panic, guilt, and a desperate fear flash in his eyes. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about," he tried, his voice barely a whisper, a pathetic attempt to regain control. I ignored him. I took the key, unlocked the box with a precise, metallic click, and pulled out the stack of documents. The white papers, covered in the dark print of medical codes and transfer amounts, looked brutal under the living room light. I didn't throw them at him. I placed them neatly next to his plate of cold chicken. I pointed a single finger at the top receipt. $4,800. Maple Street Clinic. Chemotherapy. "I know about Megan," I said simply. "I know she's sick. And I know you've taken over $15,000 from the IVF fund to pay for her treatment this month. The money we were going to wire tomorrow." He didn't speak. He just stared at the papers, his shoulders slumping. He looked suddenly old and beaten. "Look at me, Jordan," I commanded. When he finally lifted his eyes, they were wet. "She has stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Sarah," he choked out, the first piece of truth finally escaping. It came back fast. "Her insurance is useless. She doesn't have anyone else." "She has you," I stated, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "She has you. You kept it a secret because you knew I would be upset about the money, right? You thought you could replace it before I noticed? Was that the plan?" He shook his head frantically. "No, Sarah, listen. I knew you would be upset, yes, but I couldn't just let her die. We have to help her. It's the right thing to do." I leaned in, my voice dropping even further, making him strain to hear the devastating question. "The right thing to do? You are a good man, Jordan, I know that. But you spent the money for the one thing I want more than anything in this world, our child. And you did it for your ex-wife. So tell me right now honestly, do you think your dying ex-wife is more important than the child you promised me?" He finally broke. He buried his face in his hands and started sobbing raw, gut-wrenching sobs. "I didn't choose Sarah. I just reacted. I couldn't let her go. I know it looks bad. I know I messed up. I'll take out a loan. I'll get the money back. Promise. We can still do the IVF." "No," I whispered, the finality of the word echoing in the strained silence. "We can't. Because you didn't just spend the money. You spent my trust. And you did it because you couldn't let her go." You were too busy holding on to your past to see that you were letting go of our future. You say you couldn't abandon her, but I think you abandoned me. I pushed his plate away and stood up. Tomorrow is Friday. The money isn't there. And I need a clear answer before sunrise. Is this secret debt over? Is the payment done? Or will you keep dipping into our life for hers? I walked away, leaving him weeping amidst the scattered bills and the cold, uneaten dinner. The hard conflict had landed. He had to choose between his moral obligation to his ex and his commitment to his current marriage and future family. The fate of our marriage was now a number on a ledger. The night after the confrontation was brutal. Jordan didn't come to bed. He stayed on the sofa, and I could hear his choked, irregular breathing until the early hours. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, not crying, just calculating. I was calculating the exact moment I had become second place in his life. I had the facts, the deceit, the missing money, the justification. But I was missing the motive. The right thing to do wasn't enough to explain risking everything. In the morning he walked into the bedroom, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He stood over me, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. "Sarah," he started, his voice rough. "I'm so sorry. I'm going to liquidate some bonds, take out a personal loan, anything. I will replace the $15,000. It will be back in the account within 2 weeks, before we even schedule the procedure." I sat up, pulling the duvet to my chest. "That's not the point, Jordan. You keep focusing on the dollar amount, but the currency here is trust. I need to know why this lie was necessary. Why did you choose the account for our baby?" He ran his hand over his face. "Because I was desperate. Her situation deteriorated so fast. She needed the first round of treatment immediately, and the only place with that much liquid cash was the IVF fund. I panicked. I thought I could get the money back quickly, and I didn't tell you because I knew you'd give me an ultimatum, and I didn't want to choose. I couldn't." "Well, you just chose," I stated flatly. "You chose her when you wrote the check. So here is the real question. Is it over? Are you done paying for her treatment? Because if we stay together, the money we save now is ours. Not yours, not hers. Ours." He hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. "Her second round of chemo is next month," he whispered. "The clinic needs another $8,000 upfront. I already talked to the bank about the loan. I can cover that, but Sarah, I can't just stop. She's stable now, but if she relapses..." He looked at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. "I just need a few more months to get her through the worst of it. Please. We can pause the IVF for 3 months max. I'll pay for everything out of pocket, I promise." Pause the IVF. He was asking me to put our future on hold again for his past. He wasn't choosing me. He was choosing the role of her savior. The anger finally crystallized into cold, rational decision. "Get out," I said, pointing to the door. "Go pack a bag. You can stay in a hotel until we figure this out. I can't breathe the same air as your guilt and her illness right now." He didn't fight me. He left, taking only a duffel bag. After he left, the house was silent again, but this time it was a liberating silence. I needed to understand the depth of his commitment. His desperation felt too big for just being a good person. I went straight to his home office, which he always kept locked, but in his panic, he left the key hanging on the pegboard. I didn't search for more bank statements. I searched for insurance policies, legal documents, anything that formalized their bond. In a bottom filing cabinet, under a stack of old tax returns, I found it. A thick document from Phoenix Life Insurance. It wasn't a standard small policy. It was a $500,000 term life insurance policy, taken out 6 months ago. Long after we were married and just before Megan's diagnosis must have been confirmed. I quickly flipped to the beneficiary page. I expected to see me. Or maybe a split between me and a distant relative. My breath hitched in my throat as I read the name printed clearly on the form. Beneficiary: Megan Richards. Relationship: ex-wife. 100%. $500,000. Taken out while we were actively saving for our child, while he was making plans with me. This wasn't about saving her life. This was about ensuring her financial future if she died. It was a final binding promise. I sank into his leather chair, the paper shaking in my hands. The full monstrous picture snapped into focus. He wasn't paying for her chemo out of charity. He was paying to keep her alive long enough for the policy to mature, or to feel like he had done everything possible before $500,000 went to her. He hadn't just abandoned our IVF fund. He had been systematically putting measures in place to financially prioritize his ex-wife over his actual wife. He wasn't just my husband. He was her protector, bound by some deep, terrifying commitment I never knew existed. The moral dilemma was no longer his, it was mine. Do I confront him with this final, damning piece of evidence, knowing it means the immediate, absolute end of our marriage, or do I wait for him to return with his loan papers, ready to forgive his mistake, knowing that a life insurance policy for $500,000 with his ex-wife as the sole beneficiary is proof that his heart and his loyalties never fully left that first marriage? I grabbed my phone and called a lawyer. The time for guessing was over. The lawyer's name was Mr. Davison. Fast, expensive, and ruthless. He told me to keep calm, secure all my financial documents, and absolutely not to mention the life insurance policy to Jordan. He wanted the element of surprise. The divorce papers were drafted with blistering speed, citing irreconcilable differences and specifically, the misappropriation of joint funds intended for medical purposes, ours, not his ex-wife's. The final draft was ready exactly 4 days later, on a Tuesday morning less than 4 weeks after I first found the folder. Jordan called every day from the hotel, sounding more distraught and desperate. He secured the personal loan and was ready to deposit the $15,000 back into the IVF account. He thought he was fixing the problem. He thought he was earning his way back into my forgiveness. He was so focused on the money he didn't see the real cost. I told him to come home on Tuesday evening. I need to talk to you about the next steps, I said, my voice carefully neutral. When he walked in, he looked completely broken, yet hopeful. He held a bank statement showing the pending loan. Sarah, I got it. It's done. The money will be back in the account tomorrow morning. We can call the clinic. We can move forward. Just please, can we talk? I'm so sorry. He tried to touch my hand. I flinched back. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want another argument about moral obligation and second chances. I wanted him to see the consequences of his choices. Sit down, Jordan, I instructed, pointing to the armchair. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked to the kitchen island, picked up the thick manila envelope from Mr. Davison, and placed it on the coffee table. I called the bank, Jordan. Not to transfer funds. I called to put a hold on the account. You can deposit your loan money back, but I'm going to contest the $15,000 as misappropriated assets. He frowned, confused. Sarah, what are you talking about? I just replaced it. We're even. No, we're not even. I corrected him, my voice flat. This is not about $15,000. This is about what you are truly committed to. I finally looked him in the eye. I also called a lawyer. Those are the papers. His eyes dropped to the envelope. The word divorce was not visible, but the official typeface and the thickness of the stack told him everything. He didn't even pick it up. He just stared at it, his face turning ashen. Divorce? Sarah, no. Don't do this. I made a mistake. A massive one, I know, but we can fix this. I love you. We can still have our baby. He was pleading now, his voice rising in panic. You can't fix a misplaced loyalty, Jordan. You took an oath to me, yet you're financially and emotionally bound to your ex-wife. I paused, then delivered the final, calculated blow that Mr. Davison had advised against. But I needed him to know I knew. I know about the $500,000 life insurance policy, Jordan. The one where Megan is the sole beneficiary. You took it out 6 months ago, before she was even officially re-diagnosed. That wasn't an act of charity, that was a permanent commitment to her future, even if you weren't in it. He recoiled as if I had hit him. The air went out of him. All his carefully constructed arguments about moral duty and temporary help collapsed under the weight of that policy. He didn't deny it. He just covered his face with his hands, shaking his head. I was terrified. He choked out, his voice raw with defeat. She's alone. I didn't want to leave her destitute if she didn't make it. I was trying to protect everyone. I was trying to do both. You can't do both, I said, standing over him, the victorious feeling utterly absent. You chose her safety net over our foundation. You put a $500,000 commitment to your past above a life with me. That's a choice, Jordan. And the papers on the table are my choice. He finally picked up the envelope, his fingers trembling, and opened it. He read the first few lines and then looked up at me devastated. So this is it? He asked, the hope completely gone. You're walking away? Over a month of my bad judgment? No, I replied, my voice breaking slightly, despite my best efforts. I'm walking away because I found out I wasn't married to you. I was married to your guilt, your loyalty, and your commitment to a ghost from your past. And I refuse to be the second-place wife waiting for your first wife to die so we can finally start our life. I walked into the guest room, locked the door, and left him alone in the living room with the papers, the financial ruin of his secrets, and the emotional wreckage of our marriage. He had successfully secured his ex-wife's financial future, and in the process irrevocably ended his own. The house is silent again. The lockbox is empty. The IVF account still has $25,000, but the reason for the money is gone. I have the security of my own finances, the clear path to an uncomplicated divorce, and the crushing, profound realization that sometimes, even the most beautiful commitment is just a beautifully crafted lie covering an older, deeper bond. I won the money, but I lost the baby, and I'm left to wonder if Jordan, in his panicked effort to save one life, truly understood what he destroyed in the process. He says he couldn't abandon her, but he absolutely abandoned me. And the truth is, I don't know which one of us is more broken right now.